Good morning, Munna. So, today is the next episode of our Veriff Voices, and I'm absolutely delighted that we have the chance to talk to Munna Poddar today, who heads up our fraud prevention team. So, as you know, Veriff is committed to building a safer online world, and it's a mission that every person is absolutely committed to. So, I'm going to really enjoy today's session, and I think I shall hand over to Munna to get him to introduce himself to you before we go into some of the questions. Munna, would you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Thank you, Lynn. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and always even more pleasure sharing my experiences and who I am with everybody. So, just to give you a brief introduction of who Munna Poddar exactly is, I'm the senior product manager for fraud prevention here at Veriff. What I do is I work with a team of analysts, data scientists, engineers, operations, and we try to figure out the best way to prevent fraud from passing through our systems. I am an Indian by birth, and I was born and brought up in India. I moved to Estonia 3 years ago and have been enjoying my life at Veriff ever since.
What a wonderful start. So, I understand as part of your role and as part of your personal pleasure as well, you enjoy traveling, and I think you've traveled a lot with the business. Just give us some ideas about some of the background of the places you've been and some of the countries you've visited.
So yes, traveling is one of my primary goals in life. Let's say that, but it's also fun when you actually get to travel with work. So before coming to Estonia to work for another tech giant as well as with Veriff, what I was doing was I was working with a consulting company in India. That meant that I was traveling around India very much, but also within other geographies to actually deal with different client related issues hands on. So, just to give you a bit of background, I'm an engineer by training, but I have always spent my time first as an analyst and then mostly as a consultant. That means that I have had the pleasure of working with varied topics like audit analytics, like with fintechs trying to develop different data strategies, or with banks actually trying to use data science to make their systems more secure, make their processes more efficient before I actually moved on to this field of fraud prevention, which has kind of taken my heart, but it also allowed me to actually work with different geographies, trying to figure out how to stop fraud across the world, while also working with individuals from different countries, individuals from different territories to kind of collaborate and understand fraud from a better point of view.
So that sounds like a good summary of some of the skills that you've built up from your experience in your past that really help you, the way you're exceeding in the role and how we're protecting our customers at Veriff. Are there any other skills that you think are really important within your current role?
I think since my current role involves me working as a product manager for a very dynamic field such as fraud prevention, right? Uh, as you may understand, like fraud prevention is a very ever-evolving kind of a field where you need to have a bit of ongoing knowledge, plus also understand what happened before. And you have to be able to adapt and evolve as everything happens. So if I look back into my past experiences, just to name like 3 points out of this, I was an analyst. That gave me the skills to actually analyze a chunk of data, somewhat disparate at times, somewhat disconnected at times, and try to figure out how best things are evolving, connections where we cannot see it, right? The second part is from my time as a consultant. As a consultant, you are given different sets of problems. You are expected to be very nimble on your feet, so as to speak, and think of solutions, think of ideas, collaborate with people, and figure out what kind of a strategy they should take. And that's very important when you are trying to build something that is long lasting in the domain of fraud prevention. And lastly, my love for fraud prevention started when I actually worked with another tech giant within the industry, and I helped them trying to figure out how to stop fraud. And that got me down and dirty into the nitty-gritties of fraud prevention, how different individuals commit fraud in different way, how different entities perceive fraud. So overall, I would say that these three kind of like key takeaways made me ready for what I currently am doing.
Amazing. And those are real values, I think, of anybody that's thinking of moving into this space. It's really important to have that passion, and that background has really obviously helped you as you've moved through your career. So really exciting. Just want, just thinking about you talking about fraud and how fraud's evolved and looking at different countries and different territories. Do you see that fraud has changed, has evolved in recent years? Do you think there's more fraud now than there used to be? What are you seeing from the rock face, really, of fraud prevention?
Absolutely. I would say that in terms of more or less fraud, I don't think that it has become more or less, but it has evolved quite a bit, right? From the physical world to the digital world via the phygital world, so as to speak, where both physical and digital interact. It has moved a lot. And what has happened with this movement is that the scope of fraudsters damaging somebody's lives, somebody's earnings, somebody's profitability for our clients is getting way higher. So that's the change that we have seen shift happening in the recent years.
Interesting. And do you think it's changed more in certain regions, or are you seeing that as a global trend almost?
I'd say that it's kind of global, but also the speed at which certain regions have adapted to this kind of uh, evolution is actually different. Like, for example, the access to internet, access to media, access to collaboration over internet has been fast-tracked in certain, let's say, Southeast Asian countries, like LATAM countries and Africa, which traditionally did not have this level of access to infrastructure or this level of access to knowledge, so as to speak. And like any good thing in this world, right, you can use it for the better and you can use it for the worse. And a lot of very talented people are using it for the betterment of society. But sadly, there's always going to be that small chunk of individuals who kind of take the best of the society and put it for the worst use case possible.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about internet as an enabler for those terribly damaging type of activities. I understand that. So you've sort of given us some hints about some of the types of fraud scenarios, scam scenarios that you see. Can you share any of those with us? Can you give us some ideas of the types of things that Veriff, I know Veriff has a broad range of customers and industries that we support. Can you give us an example of some of the things you're seeing?
Absolutely. Like without going too much into our client details, what we can actually see is that because Veriff has something which we offer to enable clients across multiple industries or within the same industry to leverage the insights that we have, like the knowledge that we have. And within that knowledge bracket, what we see that there are potentially fraudulent actors within a certain geography because of the recent, let's say, war and the turmoil that it has brought about. It has also given rise to a certain set of fraudsters who are active across different fintechs. What they do is that they use mediums of digital manipulation. Like digital manipulation is not something new that we are using. I'm pretty sure you had used some Snapchat filters to add some colors to your face, or maybe not. But there are some very, let's say, not so nice uses of those readily available digital manipulation techniques, be it facial digital manipulation, video, audio, etc. And we have seen different fraudsters from very coordinated networks using readily available softwares and open source platforms to actually cause havoc to some of our clients. Now, because of our ability to actually see the wide picture, we are able to catch them when we need to catch them. But this has been on a very continuous rise. And again, coming to this concept of the global economy, the global interconnectedness, what we have also seen is that some of the traditional like scams that we used to see, like a person trying to convince somebody that they are from the police or they are from the bank, has moved on to the digital world. There's something we kind of classify as a tech support scam where a person would actually call you and force you or kind of like somewhat forcibly coerce you into actually doing your own IDV verification for a nefarious cause. And we have started seeing this occur more and more again. And sadly, it happens to the very high impact uh, age range of individuals and in a high impact, let's say, geographies where people are actually subjected to this. coercion, and they are forced into giving out their personal information for causes that they don't really understand. And we have been working towards building more defense mechanisms within Veriff to actually stop these things, but they are always present, ever present, somewhat growing, somewhat stopping, but they are always present.
It's really quite concerning. So you mentioned fintech. I mean, do you see fraud in industries outside the fintech world, or is it really just fintech that seems to be hit by fraud?
Absolutely. Every industry has certain degree of fraud. And in that case, it's not about the amount of fraud, it's the nature of the fraud and the impact that comes across to our different clients, right? It could be gaming, where a child is vulnerable if they get to, like, they go on board with a ID which is for an age which is lower than acceptable. It could be a simple like mobility client. The scooters go missing, right? Then you are out for a walk on a summer day and you cannot find a single scooter. What happened? Everything went away, right? So the impact is there on different clients. The measure and the kind of like degree of impact it has on their businesses is different, but we do deal with everything to the best, and the understanding that our client passes on to us, the nature of fraud, what they want us to do with that, how do we mitigate it. It's always a collaborative process. So we take into account their needs as well as our knowledge to kind of build the strategies around them.
It's fascinating. And you were talking earlier about tech scam fraud, for example, or tech scams, and talking about how they're targeted to certain populations. You know, I've heard before the issue of elder abuse, for example, where older people are manipulated either by friends and family, which is just dreadful, or by strange. Is that the type of thing you're meaning here, where certain age populations or just types of population?
Actively. Elder abuse is one of the like most prominent categories. Of course, it happens across the age group. But what has happened is that the society and the technology has gotten so evolved so fast that some individuals might actually struggle to keep up with it. They trust the process more than they should, or maybe they are not aware of what are the consequences of this trust having there. And that's why kind of like, as me and my team say, that it's our job to make sure that trust is validated by us, because we want to build the trust, but we also want to make sure that it's the right kind of trust and the right kind of individual for the right purpose. So elder abuse is something that we have been seeing, and we do feel very strongly about it, and we try our best to kind of like make sure that we are evolving our product and our service in a way to kind of mitigate and solve those problems.
That's really good. I've also heard, I mean, I think that's fabulous. And we have to, as you say, be on a mission to protect as many people as we can and that trust. But equally, if you put too strong controls in, that impacts the customer experience and people then struggle to get access to the goods and services they want. So how would you recommend that you manage that sort of challenge, really?
Absolutely. That's a key point, like accessibility. We want to make sure that we are causing difficulty only for the right people. By the right people, I mean the wrong kind. That means the fraudsters, right? We want to have the flow designed. By the flow, I mean the customers' flow when they come on board or when they are coming through us in a way that only impacts the fraudsters. And there is a sense of us bringing that insights, us bringing that knowledge from everything we have seen. And by us, I mean the entire team brings their own research, brings their own idea of what is happening, how is it happening, but also the collaboration that I mentioned. Like, it is very important for us to understand with our clients, collaborate with them. What do they exactly want? What do they need? And what is their entire architecture like? How are they dealing with it? What are the controls they have placed already, so that we don't replicate the same controls, rather we put in place checks which help and complement their controls. So that level of collaboration exists with almost all of our clients, and we try to make sure that the good individuals, the ones that actually are looking to access a valid service, don't have to work harder than they should, whereas the fraudsters, no matter how much they work hard, they should not get through us.
So it sounds to me like almost that your or the team's fraud solutions and the approach is evolving with the clients that you're working with. So as their business grows and exposes them to new risks, it's something that you're supporting them in that journey, which is just amazing. That's really cool.
Absolutely. It's a learning process. It's a learning process for everybody involved.
That's fabulous. So, on that learning process and taking it back almost to yourself and your team, you've got a big team. Fraud is ever growing. I understand all of that. What's your approach to leadership within that fraud? Because you've got such an evolving world and space and new challenges and new threats, as well as bringing people in. So, how do you support that team and help them support your clients?
So one thing I have been blessed with is having worked with a lot of very awesome leaders in my life. And by leaders, I just don't mean managers. I mean leaders who actually lead the entire thought process, not just a particular implementation. And that brings me to this concept of having a unified objective, understanding what your role is and understanding why you are doing something. The objective of it is very important. And I feel that fraud prevention as an objective is something that everybody feels very strongly about, especially being in our space where we are actually dealing with the consequences and of fraud getting through. So, for like in a first-hand manner, we feel very strongly. So, for me, leadership is about clearly defining what the objective of the team is. Second is actually allowing individuals or sub teams within the overall architecture to kind of like for them to understand and define by themselves what do they feel is the best way they can impact that objective so that they feel the sense of ownership of what they are doing. And the third part is a bit like depending upon how and who you are actually dealing with and where. uh, there's a sense of kind of like enabling, but enabling with asking the right questions. If you ask the right questions to validate their thought process, it also helps them learn from their own decisions and make better judgment call in the future. So it's not, I don't think leadership is a science per se. Of course, there are a lot of books defining a lot of things. I think it depends from individual to individual, scenario to scenario. But if I was to kind of like summarize my three go-to mantras, so as to speak, I would say that these are the three I'll go with.
Fantastic. Oh, I think that's really cool. So, I think you've already sort of touched on then your advice also to if other people were looking to join that those sort of skills, that approach, that structure to how you think and your leadership style and the people you've worked with is really, really important. So going on from that, I don't know, how long have you been with Veriff? How long have you been working for Veriff?
I'm going to finish 2 years this month, but it feels like 20 years. I sometimes I feel like I'm part of the furniture in the office, like I'm that old, but it's just been 2 years.
Wonderful. So what were your key reasons? Why did you join Veriff? Can you remember?
Absolutely. And this is a question that I always ask whenever I'm supposed to do something. Like maybe in the initial days of my career, I did not have that much of a choice to actually make this decision. But now I ask that, is the company making a product that I would want to use? Or I know somebody who will use it? Or are they doing something that will impact my close circle? Like, say for tomorrow, if my mom wants to do something, is there a way that that product would impact this? And if I come on board, can I make that product better? So in Veriff's point of view, IDV, this seamless flow of actually connecting with a service provider without having to leave your home, and all throughout the pandemic, I could easily see my mom using this to access a bank account. I use some of our clients' product. Actually, I used it to onboard on a client where I use it to send money to my mother. So there are different use cases that I already knew. And I've also seen that the culture in Veriff, the work culture that there is, it kind of like, of course, everybody makes good videos and promos and everything. But when you actually talk to people and when you actually see how they interact with each other, and that was during my interview processes, I figured that they actually enjoy what they are doing and they like doing what they do. And I wanted to be part of it. Who doesn't want to come to work every day looking forward to working, right? It's so a very good use case, a very nice product that I find usable, relatable, and also the people which have met when applying. It was all a very good combination of this. That's why I wanted to join Veriff.
Fantastic. I think that's a really passionate feeling, and I get that across the whole of Veriff. So one more thing on a very sort of personal note. I am being told that you are an absolute avid dog lover. Do you have a particular breed of dog that you have a passion for? Do you have a dog yourself? What is it about dogs?
Absolutely. I'm going to be very biased because I have a French Bulldog. Her name is Luna, and she's the absolute most adorable dog. I know that people it's the thing about me. I'm a more people person. I like having friends around, and Luna is kind of like my best friend. She sticks around with me, and she loves licking people's faces, which I don't do, thankfully, but I like interacting with human beings. So she's kind of like my persona in a dog format, and that's why I love her. And I love every dog. I don't have any preference for like dog breeds. Any dog is my favorite, but Luna has to be my top most.
A special place in your heart by the sound of it. So that's wonderful.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, and then the last thing that I have to ask you is I've been asked you to finish a sentence. So if we start the sentence with Veriff offers trust from the first hello because, how would you answer that sentence?
I don't want to sound cliched, but the truth of the fact is that the people behind the product, the faces that you don't see, actually care about the good of the world. By saying like we want to offer you something that helps you, helps mitigate some kind of fraud, helps society connect with each other, and it's not always like that. People are so passionate about what they are building because we see the end use, we see the impact that we can have. So as long as we are here and as long as we are as passionate about our own product as we are, I think anybody would be okay to trust us.
Oh, it's wonderful. Munna, thank you so much. That was a really wonderful conversation today, and I really thank you. We'll talk again.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.